You're ready. Thank you.
Councilmember.
What's he gonna do? Is Councilmember Stolberg about to walk in?
Coming in.
All right, before he walks in, well, as he walks. Good evening and welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Highland Park Plan and Design Commission for May 2nd, 2003. Mr. Fontaine, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Mantis.
Present.
Commissioner Quinlan.
Present.
Commissioner Bruckman.
Present.
Commissioner Kirsch.
Present.
Commissioner Hecht. Commissioner Moore.
Present.
And Chairman Haynes-Further.
Present.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We have a number of items on the agenda tonight. First, we will have some approval of the minutes for March 21st and April 4th. We have two items of scheduled business, continuation of a public hearing related to tobacco shops and a new public hearing for a text amendment to allow sleeping quarters in cellars. And then we also have a resolution that I would like to take first if there's no objection from the commission. Okay, so last meeting was our student representative, Adriana Mendoza's last meeting as a student representative on the commission. And I asked her to come back because I didn't realize it was her last meeting. And I think we wanted to properly salute her for her contributions to this commission. And I would just say, first of all, it's been a pleasure having you as a member of the commission. And you leave very large shoes to fill, which Jackson is doing off to a roaring start. But in the years that I've been on the commission and watched the commission, I think one of the things that really stood out is that you were an active participant in what we were doing here. And you asked wonderful questions and made great points that really helped us understand different viewpoints sometimes from perhaps what we're used to as grizzled veterans of Highland Park. So we're gonna miss you, we appreciate it. And I would like to read the resolution that we have in your honor. Whereas Adriana, I should say Adriana Lauren Mendoza, but it is Adriana Mendoza, has served with distinction as a student representative of the Plan and Design Commission, leading and participating in consideration of cases essential to the improvement of this community, its neighborhoods, and the quality of life therein. And whereas Adriana Mendoza was responsible for promoting and increasing community awareness of the need for sound residential and commercial planning and the need to appropriately design public and private improvements in Highland Park during her tenure as student representative on the Plan and Design Commission. And whereas in being the institutional memory for the commission and in serving with honor, their public service attests to the steadfast integrity, wisdom, and excellence of character. Be it therefore resolved that the members of the Plan and Design Commission of Highland Park do hereby recognize Adriana Mendoza for their dedicated public service as student representative on behalf of the residents of the city. And be it further resolved that as an expression of our respect and grateful appreciation to Adriana Mendoza's service, we hereby adopt this resolution as a permanent record thereof on the second day of May, 2023 in Highland Park, Illinois, and it's signed by all the commissioners, the Councilman Stolberg, and our staff folks. So come on up. Yes.
Do we need to, I move approval of this
Sure.
resolution.
Move to approve by Commissioner Kirsch,
Second.
second by Vice Chair Moore. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Come on up, but you know the rules, you gotta go
Yeah.
you gotta go where people can hear you, Adriana.
Perhaps telling the truth, and my name is Adriana.
No, you don't have to be sworn in.
So yes, thank you so much to the commission for offering such an opportunity. Ever since since I was, I think, a sophomore, I've wanting to be active in my community, especially as someone who's moved throughout her life a lot. And Highland Park has offered me that opportunity to really feel the community. And so I would like to appreciate the commissioners as well as everybody in the community for being so welcoming and for offering such an opportunity and for me to learn so much about Highland Park. So thank you so much.
And some point in the not too distant future, we expect to see you up here as a member of the commission.
Oh, I'll come back, don't worry.
Great, and tell everybody where you're going to be spending the next 4 years at least?
Yeah, I'm going to go to George Washington University to study international affairs with a concentration of international economics.
Great. Well, we wish you nothing but success, and we thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you so much.
Now go study for those AP exams.
Yeah.
Good luck with that. Thanks, Adriana, for coming. All right, approval of minutes is the first item. And the first item is the meetings for March 21st, 2023. I have a couple of more technical comments. So I know we just received these. I would suggest that perhaps we want to approve them subject to providing technical corrections to the staff. If there's some substantive questions or comments, let's deal with those now. I don't know whether you've had a chance to review it or not.
The only thing I had of substance was on the March 21st.
Yeah, we're only talking
Okay,
March 21st at this
the
point.
page 3 of the minutes,
Mm-hmm.
line number 12, and we were talking about the perpendicular distance across the parking space. That's not 7 feet, 18
Yeah,
inches.
I
That's
see.
supposed to be 7.18 inches, 7.18 feet.
Feet, yeah.
Or 7 feet,
2 inches.
2.5 inches. That was
Yeah.
probably the only.
I also, on page 4, I don't have the numbers like you do. At the end of the second paragraph, it says, Commissioner Heck offered yet another option, but we don't know what that option was.
Oh, yes, that's,
Right,
that's line
so-
11.
Yeah, so that seems to be missing. And I would just say, check the tape or check with Commissioner Heck as to what that is. On page 7, kind of at the middle of the page, there's a paragraph that says Commissioner Heck said, this it regulated by, and I think what it should say is, Commissioner Heck said dispensaries are regulated by state licenses, right? So with that, do I have a motion to approve the minutes subject to technical correction?
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Moore, seconded by Commissioner Kirch. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next item is the minutes of the Plan and Design Commission meeting for April 4th, 2023. Same rules, kind of. So any substantive corrections on that? Hearing none.
Yes, I
Yes.
think I actually have one.
Yes, Jackson?
So on the first page, it declares me that I'm absent that week.
Yeah,
I do remember being there,
Yeah,
and
he was
if you
here.
look in the video, which I did
Yes.
just check, the only thing you can see is my water bottle right here.
I know you were here.
And then once again, for, my last name is Roberts instead of Jackson, so, thank you.
We just call you Jackson. All right, and make that same correction on the first set of minutes too. All right, anything else? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes for April 4th?
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Moore, seconded by
Second.
Commissioner Bruckman. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nay? All, motion passes. All right. First order of scheduled business is continuation of public hearing 2023-ZTA-001 for a chapter 150 zoning code text amendment to amend or to prohibit or otherwise regulate the use of property for tobacco shops and other principal and accessory uses for the sale or use of tobacco products, e-cigarettes, smoking, vaping, and all related paraphernalia intended for smoking or vaping of any kind, regardless of products, in the various zoning districts of the city, and specifically, as well as other regulations as may be necessary, important, or beneficial to the city and its residents. So this is a matter that was heard last, when? It's been a while,
Well, it was continued from 2 weeks ago, which
Right.
was April 18th, but there wasn't discussion
right?
at that meeting. Before that, you'd have to go back to the March 21st meeting, which
Okay,
was the first
March-
meeting this was
March
considered.
21st. Okay, thank you. Shows you I was reading my minutes, right? Okay. Mr. Burhop, you have a presentation for us.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes.
may. The city's in the midst of implementing a database system. So this evening's presentation won't take the form of a typical presentation with regard to this item. Staff time has been largely consumed with the last stages of implementation. And so I do ask for your indulgence as we go through this. And we know that we did provide information late with regard to this item. We're not looking for a vote here this evening. If you choose to, you can direct staff to draft approval documents or an ordinance for later review and final action at another public hearing to be scheduled.
And just so the folks who are here this evening for this matter, you will have the opportunity to provide comment tonight. So just so you know, when we get to that part of the meeting, I will ask you if you want to testify or provide comment that you'll have to be sworn in. You will have to direct questions through the chair, and you will have 3 minutes per speaker. Okay.
First, my name is Carl Burhop, Senior Planner with this City of Highland Park Community Development Planning Division. First, just a side announcement. If anybody is here for 1126 Lincoln Avenue South, a variation application, that is not going to be at this meeting. I apologize. That one will be on May 18th. New notices were sent out for that. So if anyone's here for 1126 Lincoln Avenue South, which I hope nobody is, because I did send out kind of a reminder for everyone. That's not this evening. That's May 18th.
And that's not even in front of this board.
No, it's not. No.
In front of the Zoning Board of Appeals. So they meet on Thursdays.
So
Okay,
I like to take notes actually for this because this is a request for commission feedback. So if I may, it's rare I do a presentation from this position, but I may do the presentation.
you're free to
from
do
this position.
which works for you, sir.
So as previously stated, this was considered on March 21st by the Plan and Design Commission, and the PDC gave various comments at that meeting, general discussion about changing versus not changing the regulations, discussing whether buffers, the sensitive land uses such as schools, et cetera, are needed, considering if this use, and again, this is discussing tobacco shops and smoking-related type uses. Should be limited to certain commercial or industrial zoning districts. Commission briefly touched on other non-zoning mechanisms for regulation. There was a request for review of how other municipalities regulate these types of uses. And then additional public coverage on this topic was requested for the next public hearing. So staff's response. So there is a breakdown of nearby municipal regulations in the attachment 1. Of course, that was posted only a bit before the meeting. And so, but that's online now, and the commission can certainly review that. It's in matrix form, so hopefully it's more digestible. can certainly review that before the next commission meeting. It varies. Regulations vary. You know, I always try to think how I can summarize it. I mean, they vary. I mean, some municipalities allow them as conditional uses. Some of them allow them by right. Some allow them in various commercial districts. Others have limitations. Some have definitions, and some don't. It just varies. It's in matrix format, so hopefully that makes it more digestible. As for the public outreach, the city did provide a e-news blast. We reached out to the owners that we have on record for the 5 tobacco stores. So there was an effort for public outreach. And there were comments included in the packet. Again, I know the packet was posted just before the meeting, but those are in there and that will be available for review. So then providing a set of policy alternatives. Okay, so the first thing is definition. The proposal or presentation before the commission. So one thing that has to be done is there has to be a definition for the land use. And there has to be consideration for both principal use and accessory use, because tobacco and smoking shops can be a principal use. Then as discussed at the March 21st meeting, there's also the consideration for the accessory use, where other retail stores may sell these types of products, but as an accessory use. So staff would propose a definition for tobacco and smoking shop to kind of replace the tobacco shop use in section 150.490. This is similar to what was in the March 21st report, but slightly different. I'll just read it real quickly. A retail outlet that sells tobacco and smoking-related products as its principal use, including paraphernalia related to consumption of tobacco and legal recreational drugs, such as cannabis and herbs, as well as selling smoke-themed art, magazines, music, and clothing, home decor, and accessories. This use does not include adult medical use cannabis dispensary or vape shop. And as the commission may be aware, vape shops or stores that sell e-cigarettes as a principal use are prohibited in the zoning code. That's per definition in section 150.202. And then the accessory use consideration, accessory sales of smoking and smoke-related products and paraphernalia. No more than 20% of the retail sales floor area open to the public can be used for the accessory display and sale of paraphernalia related to the consumption of tobacco and legal recreational drugs or other smoking products that are not tobacco products. Again, that was discussed at the March 21st meeting, because there's a principal consideration, a principal use consideration, where a business, that's their principal use, their operation, their sales, versus, you know, what do you want? I mean, grocery stores, gas stations, etc., where it's an accessory use. So then, in terms of the alternatives, kept it relatively straightforward here. So, alternative A and alternative B are the tobacco shops and tobacco and smoking shops. Is what that should say. Tobacco and smoking shops are proposed to be a permitted use in the I-Light Industrial Zoning District, or alternative B, both the I-Light Industrial District and the B3 Highway Commercial Zoning District. Then the additional alternatives C and D are essentially the same as those, but with some type of implementation for buffer setbacks to sensitive uses such as schools or other similar. And then the remainder of the report discusses the buffers that are in the code for the adult cannabis dispensary, which I can get into if the commission wants that additional information. Of course, this information is also in the zoning code. This talks about the various location requirements for adult use cannabis dispensaries. And that's it. That's the presentation. We're looking for feedback.
And Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
we put those in there to just give you by way of example, whether or not those buffers are needed for this type of use is, you know,
We can
up
discuss.
to the commission.
Right.
But that gives you ideas about what those buffers might be.
And
why we put it-
we still have the alternative to, I mean, there's 2 other alternatives that aren't up there. One is to do nothing, leave it as it is, right? Which permits this use in any of our commercial districts, if I'm not mistaken, as a permitted use.
Well, is that true? Is permitted in all districts at this point? No.
Currently, right now, the current
districts.
The current
Commercial,
zoning
is it?
code permits tobacco shops in all commercial and industrial zoning districts
Right.
as a permitted use.
Yeah.
That is the current status quo, so to speak.
Right. The other thing would be to completely ban them, in any district, right? Which I think we had talked about and decided that was not a very realistic approach, right? I guess there would be yet another one when I looked at your chart, and that would be to make them conditional uses, but, I'd leave it up to the commission whether they really want to do that. Questions of staff from the commission?
Essentially, those two items,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, that you rightly pointed out, from the feedback the last time, we winnowed this down, and so those
Yes.
were eliminated, and so we
Right.
tried to put forth where the decision points were still open with commission.
And-
But certainly, if there's been reconsideration, we could
Well,
go back. We made one definition as opposed to multiple definitions. Everybody said, it should just be one, and that's why that's there. And so, this is really a reflective of that feedback. And so certainly, it's an open public hearing. There's more information that you'll be reading as you read the packet before the next meeting. And we have public comment and testimony.
Right. And part of what I was saying was just so that the people who have not taken the time to either read the minutes or have watched the video understand some of these things have been discussed previously, right? And the other thing I would add is, of course, this came to us directly from city council. They asked us to study this. So that's why it's on our plate. Questions for staff? Yeah, Commissioner Quinlan.
Yeah, if and when this goes for findings of facts, what planning documentations will this be intersecting with? And I say, for example, recently we had a rich history with the proposed changes with the bike path. We had a lot of planning documentation to refer to and community engagement. Or with the upcoming one with the sellers, there's findings of facts published, and there's some ties into our comprehensive plan. For me to look into, I guess, later after this meeting, where are we tying this into?
Yes,
Have to
Carl.
meet the standards of the zoning code for a text amendment. And yes, Carl.
Well, yeah, so there are findings of fact this evening, not for this item, but for the other item. And so that's fresh in my mind. And those may not apply to this one, obviously, they will be different.
Sure.
But those findings of fact did reference several, I'm not saying this would be connected to that, but this is just where we go and where we look. They're connected to certain type of economic development or regulation or business oriented, or whether community value oriented objectives or goals within the master plan. But I haven't actually done findings of fact for this one yet, so I'm not saying that would apply, but those are the types of things I go to look at when I put the findings of fact together for the one part where, the one standard where it references the master plan.
Very good.
I hope that kind of answers that question.
Yes, thank you. And kind of a second piece of that, just reading through this had me thinking about, do we have any value statements kind of for the city I don't have more beyond that, but are there other things that Highland Park, like these are our core values as a city kind of document? I don't even know if it exists, but it's something I just thought of.
The city council sets forth core values, and you see the little dots in our presentation, the colored circles, they each stand for a different core value of the city. But I don't think that would necessarily intersect with this per se.
Understood.
Essentially, this is a type of retail use, right? And our code is specific and does regulate beyond just the word retail. If we just had, and this goes back to something that has been discussed before, and I just would like, if you would indulge me for a second.
Oh, absolutely.
This is exactly what
Absolutely.
we talk about when you say, if you do have a code that is general in nature, then retail is retail. This is just a retail use,
Right.
and there's nothing to talk about, right? If it was just a retail on the code, that's it, then this is retail. But our code has gradations, right? So there's groups of retail uses in a category, and then there's more fine-grained definitions and use permissions. And so, again, and Mr. Chairman and I have talked before, there's having the ability to control land use in the way that you'd like necessarily leads to more detailed use tables.
It's more complicated than being simple, but it's complicated for a reason,
Correct,
right?
correct. There's trade-offs, right?
It gives us flexibility to drill down and regulate very specific uses,
Correct.
right?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, as a planner on the planning commission, I was just trying
Yeah.
to link it to the plans.
Sure,
That's fine.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Vice Chair Moore.
So, excuse me, my question would revolve around wanting to see where alcohol, wine, beer shops all fall into this. Like, I feel like since they're all regulated by the state, maybe they should all have similar regulations here in the city. And I didn't have time to look that up because I didn't think of it until now.
That's okay.
Okay. While your discussion carries on, we could take a quick look, but we'll make sure in the next iteration of this hearing, Mr. Chairman, that we'll include that explicitly in your memo.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bruckman.
Just a quick question, as I'm looking at the chart, a little bit, is there a way, like, when you really go into the zoning to like regulate it more, like if there's 3 types of these shops, is there like a way to put like a limit on it, or is that?
Not very, can I respond to that one? It's zoning is not used to regulate competition, right? So you can't really say we're only going to have 3 cupcake shops, right? There was a time when it seemed like there was a cupcake shop on every block in downtown Highland Park,
Resolved
right?
itself.
Huh?
And that resolved itself.
And that resolved itself because the ones that were not successful, well, they all went away, but the ones that were not successful went away faster, right? That's the nature of zoning, in my mind. So I don't know that we can put a cap on it. You could conceivably say, I want them to be conditional uses and regulate it that way, but that causes potential problems, as Corporation Council will probably agree with, that are you being prejudicial if you deny one person, one business versus accepting another, correct?
Well, I'll say this, Chair. Each hearing, each matter stands on its own. They're unique, just like property. And so I always advise away from using a particular case as precedent for another, just because there's myriad factors that can go into it.
Very fact specific, very location specific.
Right.
We are recommending that this be a permitted use. I just want to be on
Yes.
record saying that. In terms of limiting the number, well, yes, like Mr. Chairman said, the zoning code really isn't it's not intended to be limiting competition in that way. But we do have in certain cases, as in the cannabis dispensaries, buffering that does buffering between cannabis dispensaries so that there can't be a concentration. Now, there is determined to be a reason, externalities that are caused by doing that, right? And so that's an important nexus of why would you say you can't have more than X within a certain number of feet. So in that way, due to the buffering, there is a shadow limitation. It's not an explicit number in our code, but there is, as a practical matter, a shadow limitation on the number of dispensaries that could be in the city of Highland Park.
Especially when combined with the limited number of zoning districts that you can locate that kind of business, right?
Yep, correct.
So, that answer your question?
Yes.
And I believe that number is, from what I recollect,
1,500?
I think it's 8. I think we did the math and it's probably 8. It depends on what parcels you're using and things like that, but about 8. Yeah, that's what I recollect from the adult use dispensaries conversation.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes. Vice Chair.
So I understand there's like a state liquor license. Is there a city liquor license?
I don't know, is there a state liquor license? I know there's city liquor
Yeah,
licenses.
absolutely.
Okay, and is there like a tobacco license too that one would have to get to sell tobacco?
I'd have to check on that.
All right, I'm
I
just
don't
trying to
know.
figure out
I
how
don't
all
believe
these
so.
things like line up together in terms of,
I did think I saw that in one of
Permissions
the,
I believe there is a license for
Please.
tobacco.
Please,
restrictions As well,
thank
but
you.
I don't have the code reference.
okay, I was just curious.
All right, so
But we can-
you'll get that
Next time.
information
Yep, we
for
can
the
make
next
sure,
time.
we could
as well.
verify, yep.
Thank you.
And I have a hunch that one of our citizens here are gonna add to that conversation. Anything else?
No.
All right, so let's now open this for the public to give us some comments. If you are interested in providing comments or testimony, please line up at the lectern here. I'll swear you in, and we can go on our way again. Once again, you'll have 3 minutes, and please, when you come to the lectern, you can step up. When you get up there, please, after I swear you in, state your name and spell the last name for our note taker who is out in the Ethernet. Okay, yes, sir. You raise your right hand, please. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you. And you are?
My name is Howard Geiderman, spelled Geiderman. I'm the owner of Old Chicago Smoke Shop, located at 221 Skokie Valley Road in the Crossroads Shopping Center. We have been operating in this location for 25 years, and I have owned the store for the last 19 years. We sell primarily cigarettes and cigars. During the COVID times, we sold face masks, hand soap, Clorox cleaning supplies, paper towels, and Kleenex for our customers. We do not, or have we ever sold Kratom, CBD, Delta 9, or THC products. We do not sell bongs or hookahs. We have an exemplary record of not selling products to underage minors. We proudly include among our many customers several Highland Park policemen, firemen, and EMTs. We have a long history of working with and complying with Highland Park regulations and building inspectors. We try and maintain a low profile. Our store is never open later than 7 p.m. No advertisements in local publications. No tables or booths at city festivals. No sponsorships, believe it or not, of Little League baseball teams, which we've been asked to do. I'm not sure why this meeting is being held upon one day's notice to me. One day. Are all Highland Park tobacco license holders misbehaving or just a select few? We have not been notified in writing or visited by anyone from the city of any questionable actions we may have taken. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to be clear, regardless of what we do, you will not be forced out of business, right? This is not retroactive to existing businesses. It will apply to somebody coming into the town, and I appreciate what you had. I mean, I'm correct in saying that, right, Director?
Yeah, legal pre-existing, what would happen is the uses might, depending on what the outcome of the new ordinance is, might be rendered legal pre-existing non-conforming uses. So would be allowed to carry on the business operations, but expansion or changes to those operations would necessitate consideration of a discretionary.
So I appreciate, I just wanted to put you a little bit at ease, and I apologize, unfortunately, when you do a text amendment, you don't notify everybody. One of the things that the commission did ask for is to put in the e-news blast, which the city did do, that this hearing was going to take place tonight. So I apologize that you just found out about it. We do the best we can. Our staff does the best we can. as you can tell, we're not rushing to judgment tonight. It's going to be continued to a future hearing as well. But I appreciate your comments. I just want to make sure you understand where we're coming from, so.
I mean, I'm confused. Is this all for a perspective for new people who want to come into the city, or is this?
Well, I think, as I understand it, and Councilman Stolberg may elucidate a little more. The city has gotten complaints because a number of these types of shops, primarily that sell paraphernalia, have popped up recently in town. And there have been concerns about, and particularly both in the neighborhood commercial area and in the central business district. And I think there's some concern about why they're, about how they operate and why they've popped up. Is that a fair way to put it?
Totally.
Okay. So that's why this is in front of us. And again,
Okay.
it was referred to us by city council.
And-
So this is an item came from city council. Yes.
And Mr. Chairman, the council did ask the Plan and Design Commission to consider this and make a recommendation. They did not set forth what that should be per se, but they wanted your thoughtful consideration of the item and advisement. So that is one thing to point out. The other thing to point out is this gentleman's business is in one of the zoning districts that we indicated the business should, that these types of
One of the
businesses should be
options.
allowed by right.
Right.
Okay, so which would mean there'd be no change. You'd be allowed to be there by right. It would have no effect on you in that way.
Okay,
So just something to note.
okay, I mean,
Okay.
I can remember back when the smoking age was changed from 18 to 21. And to be honest, that was a favor for us. I mean, nothing could have happened that was better. To no longer have young kids coming in groups into our store was great. And putting up the signs everywhere, every
Right.
6 feet,
Gee.
not an issue.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, as long as, we're happy to do business here and,
We appreciate your being a merchant here too.
okay.
So,
All right, thank you.
next. Come on up. You
And I need
Raise
to-
your right hand, please.
Yes,
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, and your name, please?
My name is Barbara Denecker. I'm Executive Director of Community the Anti-Drug, which is a local coalition that serves Highland Park and all the communities feeding into our high school district. We're a coalition of over 100 volunteers representing over 30 community organizations. And our goal is ultimately to ensure a strong, healthy future for our youth. And we know that drugs and alcohol can stand in the way of that. So I thank Mr. Geigerman for not sponsoring the Little League game because that's the type of thing that we're concerned with. And so I just wanted to come today to also offer information. Some of the things that we would be concerned about, and we've been hearing a lot about also from our counterparts throughout the state, is the concerns about kratom and the unregulated cannabis products like Delta 8, Delta 10, THCO, THCP, HHC. The industry keeps coming up with more of those things. And so just to share with you that kratom is also commonly known as gas station heroin. It reacts in the brain like an opioid would. It can be psychoactive, it can be addictive, it can cause overdoses. The THC products, the unregulated THC products that don't fall under the state marijuana law. The only reason they don't fall under that state marijuana law is because they're either extracted from the hemp cannabis sativa plant instead of the marijuana cannabis sativa plant, or they're synthetically derived. But they're still THC, they're still psychoactive, they can still be addictive, they can still cause psychosis and things of that nature. And of course, those are things that we're concerned about when they are located in our family-friendly downtown of Highland Park and have lots of advertising in the storefront, because we know from numerous studies on outlet density for marijuana shops, but also alcohol shops and tobacco shops, that it's actually kind of common sense. The research says the more advertising that our young people see, the more stores that they see, the more likely they are to use. And so that's really what I wanted to share with you today, that other states, other municipalities in Illinois have banned these unregulated THC products and Kratom altogether. There are currently 15 states, just found out about another one today, who have banned the unregulated THC product. There are 6 states that have banned Kratom. And in our state of Illinois, we have 4 communities that have banned Kratom, and Elk Grove Village just recently, a month or 2 ago, banned the unregulated THC products because of public health concerns. So I wanted to share that with you as you are considering this, because we do know that a lot of our students come downtown Highland Park, and they're here and they're seeing those storefront ads. And we also know that that is more accessible to them. Currently, state law, and I'm not sure about municipal law, but state law doesn't have an age restriction on these unregulated THC products. And Kratom, the age restriction is 18. So those are also concerns that obviously we have for our youth. And we want to share that information with you and be available to you if you want any more information like that we either have or can look up for you.
Great. And if you could provide the staff with a list of those communities in Illinois that have banned this product or regulated it, I think that might be helpful for our discussion.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? We're not that scary, I promise.
Not tonight.
Not tonight. Could you raise your right hand, please, for me? And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, and please state your name and spell out the last name for the...
Sure. My name is Catherine Spencer. The last name is Spencer, and it's Catherine with a C.
And I believe you sent an email too, right?
I did, yes.
Okay, but
Yes.
go ahead.
I wasn't sure if I sent it in time, so
That's
I'm
fine.
glad that you
We
made the packet.
just got
That's
it,
great.
so
Okay,
feel
awesome.
free to speak.
Okay, great. My name is Catherine Spencer. I'm a 20-year resident of Highland Park. I have 3 children, one in middle school, one in high school, and one in college. I'm here today asking you to ban the sale of Kratom and unregulated THC products, all these different Delta products in Highland Park. As a licensed clinical social worker in the community, as well as a parent, I really don't want my teens in the community and children exposed to the advertising or given access to the unregulated and unsafe addictive products that can sidetrack them from their hopes and dreams. I think there's a lot of confusion around these Delta and Kratom products for adults. I think a lot of adults don't exactly understand what they are. So if adults don't understand it, they're not talking to their kids about it, and how are kids are supposed to understand about it when there's just not a lot of information out there. So I don't think kids are aware of the harms associated with their use. And I also think we should consider and think about zoning for the Delta products and Kratom similar for zoning for marijuana dispensaries, since they both contain THC. I have noticed that new products are constantly being introduced to the market. You know, there's Delta 8, then there's Delta 10, then there's Delta O, then there's Delta acetate. Like, they keep coming up with new names for it. So if you do put something into the zoning, I hope that there's a way to come up with more of a general kind of regulation, so that it's not just what's available today, because tomorrow it can be other things. So please take that into consideration when you're coming up with the language that's being used. Thank you for considering my comments.
Anyone else? Oh, you all just heading up. Oh, come on up. Okay, well, let this young lady go first, and then I'll get to you. Thank you. Hi, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And your name? And
Christina Wilson. It's
Okay.
Christina with a K, spelled Wilson.
Okay.
I'm a new Highland Park resident, so Commissioners, Chairperson, thank you for having me. It's my first time speaking, and I'm nervous. I don't know if you saw
Don't
me,
be nervous.
shaking back
We're
there.
not scary, I promise you.
Okay, I just have a little script, so I'm going to do it.
Sure.
Relating to this matter, I urge the board to adopt the strictest possible approach in developing policies and regulations relating to smoke shops, tobacco, vape, and other related products such as kratom and smoking paraphernalia. In the summer of 2022, I was living with my husband and 4-year-old daughter in a second-story condo above a retail space in Chicago when a smoke shop opened up right beneath us. So as you can imagine, this caused major concern for us, and our first immediate concern was smoke or vapor infiltration from that space, but we conducted research on the other impacts that it might have. The likely increase in loitering and crime related to smoke shop being in that space. We conducted research similar to what we heard earlier about how much more likely youth are to use tobacco based on their brevity to smoke shop and exposure to advertising. And naturally, we were just opposed at our core to supporting the sale of a deadly product. You know, the quote I have here is from the American Lung Association, but you know, they say tobacco products kill more people than alcohol, AIDS, car accidents, illegal drugs, murders, and suicides combined. And one state Supreme Court recently noted that cigarettes likely constitute the most dangerous product lawfully sold to consumers. As a result of the lax Chicago zoning laws related to smoke shops, we felt forced to move and sell our home, which was meant to be our forever home. And we chose to move to Highland Park, and due to the fact that there were no major smoke shops, there were no smoke shops closer than Highwood. We were eager to leave all of that behind, so we purchased a townhome right up here at the corner of Central and Linden in October 22. And since moving here in December, we have had 2 smoke shops pop up east of the Metro tracks in downtown Highland Park. So although they are not directly underneath us, we have some similar anxieties. And in conclusion, as a board, you have the opportunity to take a firm stand here against the sale of a deadly product to promote the health of all in your community. A proliferation of smoke shops will push families away, as was the case for me and my family in Chicago. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Excellent job. Yes, sir. Come on up. Raise your right hand, please. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
So help me God.
Thank you. And do you please state your name and spell it for the record?
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Jacob Fine. My last name is spelled F-I-N-E.
Love all these people with easy names tonight. When you have a name like Hainsfurther, it's never easy. Yes, sir.
Well, Commissioner, you want to run a wonderful meeting.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure for me to be here. I started off my career as an auditor with Arthur Anderson, and back in the early 80s, I was assigned to auditing the city of Highland Park. So I was here the summer of 1981 and 1982, and I was stationed in the basement of this building for both of those summers. It's a pleasure to be back. With that said, I'm also a resident of Highland Park. I live in the Brook Estates condo complex. I've lived here now for 7 years. And there was some really insightful things that I heard tonight. First, longtime friends with Howard, and I'm a cigar smoker myself, and I've been going to the old Chicago Smoke Shop for, about 10, 12 years. And we have a wonderful, wonderful facility there, great camaraderie, wonderful business, and it's a wonderful place. I really, I learned a few things tonight about this THC garbage products, and only common sense would tell you that we don't want this in our community. This stuff is garbage. Kids are vulnerable to it, and if there was some way that we could regulate this to keep it away from our community, that would be great. And I really, I like the idea also of a buffer zone that would limit the opening of these vape shops that they have any proximity to grammar schools, high schools, because, common sense tells us, wisdom tells us, kids are vulnerable, teenagers are vulnerable. You don't want that around schools, with young kids, because it just makes them vulnerable to start using and smoking at early ages. And so I think it's a good idea if we could just keep them away from schools and as limited as possible. And with that said, I'll sip it.
Thank you, Mr. Fine.
Yes.
Anyone else who wants to speak? Okay, seeing none. Have a little bit of discussion, I would say, and give some direction to the staff. Joel, or we, or Carl, at the end of the day, are we going to recommend a specific ordinance, or are we going to recommend findings of fact in favor of or against whatever it is that, we choose to do here?
We would like to provide an ordinance, and if the commission, directs that, sure.
Okay.
So that you'll be able to see that along with the finding of fact.
Okay, so it'd be
I think
both.
that's best, yeah.
All right, so let's start on the left, if you want to provide, give some thought to, well, actually, I'm going to start on there. I'm going to start with our student representative down there. Because, we heard a lot tonight, and I learned a lot tonight. I appreciate you all coming. How do you, what do you think we should be doing here? What direction should we be giving staff? So Jackson, why don't you start us off?
So to reiterate from last meeting where we talked a lot about, we got down to this idea of only permitting in certain zoning districts. I still think that's a good course to go on. The example I brought up last meeting was the Old Chicago Smoke Shop, where it's in a location where it's not accessible by walking, it's accessible by car. You have to make a conscious decision of getting in your car and driving to the smoke shop to purchase something from that smoke shop. It's the same idea as the Binny's that is almost next door. You have to make a conscious decision of getting in your car, driving to the Binny's to buy alcohol. Meanwhile, another thing about accessibility I'd like to say is that Highland Park is kind of unique. Me going to many different high schools is that we have very walkable schools. A lot of our school districts are next to residential units, next to commercial districts. When I drive home from Highland Park every day, I see a lot of middle schoolers and even elementary schoolers walking around the central business district. So I'd just like to keep that in mind, that when we do have these things walk in the places like the central business district, where it's easy to get to, these kids are being exposed to that quite a bit as they walk past to go to Starbucks or Chipotle or something like that.
And now you know why our student commissioners are so valuable to our process. Thank you, Jackson. Commissioner Quinlan?
I was, what you were saying, I kind of lost my question.
I'll come back to you if you want to rethink about it. Sure. Okay, all right. Commissioner Bruckman?
Wow, yeah, I would also say what I learned a lot tonight too. There is a lot that was mentioned I didn't even know what was out there. So, I mean, I would go with, if there's some way to, obviously, to limit certain products being sold to these shops, as well as just, we have this in like certain zoning areas that we currently have. But I think the big thing to me that stuck out was if there's a way we could limit the sale of some of these THC products that were mentioned tonight that could be harmful, especially having two young kids of my own, really young, but, like just to think about the future generations as well. That's what I would.
Commissioner Mantis?
Yeah, so I think great feedback from the public. I also learned a lot. I guess going back to staff's presentation about definitions, I almost wonder if it may complicate things, but it may be worth it to kind of go in and break up the definitions of what we're talking about, even if the restrictions and zoning restrictions end up being the same. I think the one thing I'm hearing is that tobacco is different than, I think it was called unregulated cannabis. And I think that those two things fundamentally are separate audiences, separate purchasers. And I think from a good housekeeping standpoint, it might be worth it to define those two things differently. Again, may still limit where they can be used throughout the city in the same way, but it would be good to separate those.
Great. Commissioner Kirch?
So, I guess I'm an option B person mostly. I think to have it permitted in light industrial and B3 makes sense. I think those almost automatically buffer themselves. I'm actually a fan of eclectic downtowns, and I would be in favor of making it a conditional use in the central business district. The conditional use
would then allow us the control that I think people are asking for, but it would give us at least the chance to create a different mix and vibrancy downtown. The product question is, to my mind, not a zoning or planning question. That's something else, isn't it? I mean,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. Director.
I will say that when this initiated, I did ask the city manager specifically, I said, are we looking to regulate land use or are we looking to regulate the products? She said the land use. And so that's where this petition came and was directed to the Plan and Design Commission. So I will say that. That doesn't mean that product can't be regulated. It's just, and maybe.
Well,
the
it may be
commission
under a
suggests
a different ordinance,
Right,
right?
maybe even the commission suggests as such, but it's not in your, in the purview of what you were asked to do by the council at this point, certainly.
right, the council could do that at its
Hold on,
own.
thought for 1 second. Councilman Stolberg.
Thank you, Chair. Joel, could you not accomplish potentially both by regulating product in the definition of a smoke shop in the code? And what its
If you
permissible
separate them
sellable items would be? Or prohibited items?
Indirectly, yes, you could.
I mean, obviously, it makes sense.
We can talk about how to handle that.
Right,
I
but I'm
understand
just
where
saying,
we're going.
we went through the same thing, and I think, Tripp, you were on, when we had medicinal marijuana, then recreational marijuana in certain zoning districts in proximity
Yes.
to schools and.
To each other.
Correct.
Even.
But just, I was just thinking that there's probably a way to do both if that's
Okay.
your.
I think that's,
You could, but I just want to point out that, it's respectfully, I don't think it's perhaps not the right tool. And the reason why is as follows. So you can do that, and you can indirectly do that by separating out the uses and kind of getting at that, right? But there is, by zoning is, essentially that's going forward. So the pre-existing ones will be able to sell. And then, so you have a situation where you have already existing being able to do that, but no future ones. If you're concerned about the issue in the way I think we heard it, that's not really going to achieve that end.
ordinance.
And this is why I say it's not really the best use of zoning to do that, although, yes, you could do exactly what we were just talking about. Yeah.
But an ordinance from the city could conceivably
That would be.
limit the products, right?
I'd have to.
I'm assuming?
Chair, we're talking about
Just a regular,
non-zoning.
non-zoning, regular,
Absolutely, so
right?
it's regulated in chapter 125, I looked it up. There are, as Vice Chair mentioned, there are licenses that are specific to tobacco shops. Of course, as Joel said, outside of our purview, but
Right.
it is something that the city council could, if it wanted to do.
But I think that as Director Fontaine pointed out, perhaps the answer to that is, as part of our recommendation, we recommend to the city council, they adopt an ordinance that restricts the products or incorporate or issue special licenses for the sales of those kinds of products. Because, and I don't mean to steal anybody's thunder, one of my concerns is we're primarily talking about principal uses. That does not get into accessory uses, which means that, we know, that there are businesses in this community, gas stations, convenience stores, drug stores that sell tobacco products, right? They don't, some of them, I believe, also sell some of these unregulated, unregulated THC products or what, the ones that I've heard really are objectionable, right, to a number of the people in the community. So, I think we have to look at this bigger picture, and the only way I could tell you to do that really would be some kind of ordinance not related to zoning, but related to licensing and specific uses or specific products.
Chair.
Yes, sir.
I think, well, first of all, the specific question before the board today is whether there should be a text amendment within the zoning code, chapter
Correct.
150. Certainly, a discussion can be had as to whether other parts of the city code can be or should be modified. But I disagree that this commission would be able to issue, for instance, a resolution recommending to the city council that, let's say, chapter 125 be modified.
Right. But we could suggest that they look at that. Right.
And, yeah.
That's, I think, what I was suggesting. I was not saying we're adding a recommendation that they should change it more than, we heard a lot of testimony that these particular products are objectionable and that you should look at a way to regulate them.
Absolutely.
Beyond what zoning.
Beyond
can do.
zoning.
That doesn't preclude you from having a zoning recommendation.
Right.
Also about
Oh, no.
where you'd like to see various
Yeah.
things located. Yeah.
Did I steal too much of your time?
Actually, believe it or not, that was my last question.
Thank you. Vice Chair?
I think I have to agree with Commissioner Mantis that I think we need to pull tobacco and whatever all the vape and unregulated THC products are and deal with that separately. I'm also in agreement with Commissioner Kurtz that maybe alternative B seems like a good option for now. But I do think we need to look at how to deal with the unregulated cannabis, which is all new to me.
Yeah.
Did Commissioner Quinlan think of his question?
Did you think of your question? Are you ready for me to rock and roll?
Commissioner Kirsch did a better job than I would have.
Okay.
That's not.
Out of curiosity, Councilman Stolber, before I talk, you want to say anything or?
No, you can cut me
good.
off anytime.
All right. I too believe that option B is the best option from a zoning standpoint of regulating this. I'm really struggling with the accessory use part of it. We have people who sell these products as accessory uses in districts other than those two districts. They should be entitled to sell products that I don't like cigarettes. I don't smoke. I don't want them in my house. But they have a right to be able to sell, I don't think I should preclude somebody who wants to do that from doing it because it's, I think the dangers are well known. I think with the unregulated THC or cannabis products, it's a totally different story. And I would personally, I'm not convinced that we need to define it because I think there was a good point raised that these things change regularly, right? So are you going to, every time there's a new product out there, are you going to change your definition? So I would prefer personally to see us as part of our recommendation, recommend to the city councils in a way that I kind of mentioned. We've heard testimony from a number of citizens of the community who are concerned about the unregulated sale of these products, right? I think it is such a concern that it should be dealt with expeditiously, not wait for somebody to go out of business before they should stop selling it or regulating it. And I don't think that's something zoning does. I think that's something that the city code does. And that's the way that I would approach it personally. I think I hear consensus, at least for you all, that we're interested in alternative D as the restrictions in terms of zoning. What about the buffer? I actually don't mind the buffer idea because I think that, again, this is a public health issue. I think cannabis is considered to be has always been a public health issue. I would like to see it regulated in much the same way that we're doing cannabis, which would mean we'd want to, we're restricting it to these two zoning districts. Cannabis, it's only one, but in this case, we'd look at two, and that we have this buffer, that keep it out of the area of where young people are going to focus. I thought Student Commissioner Robert gave a really excellent summary as to why that should be considered. So, I'd like B, but I'd like it with kind of, I don't know whether it's B or it's D with B3 included as a permitted use.
Isn't that C?
Huh?
That's C.
Oh, that's C.
Yeah.
Right. I guess I'm a C person then. I also, not in favor of it being a conditional use in the central business district. I understand vitality issues, but I think it's much more, I think there are reasons that are empty storefronts that have nothing to do with the types of businesses that are in there. I think it has everything to do with the landlords who are renting those spaces to people. So I would much rather, I think there's ways to solve our downtown issues that don't deal with uses that we would find distasteful. And I'm afraid that when you use a conditional use, it really puts a strain on saying no to somebody. I know each case stands on its own, but it's, even if it was a lawsuit that didn't go anywhere, it still costs to defend it and to deal with it. And so, to me, I'd just like to keep them out of the downtown. I'd certainly like to keep it out of neighborhood commercial. I happen to have one of these shops a couple blocks from my house in a neighborhood commercial district. I can tell you it's there because the landlord is, in my opinion, extremely lazy, hasn't invested in his property, and only is interested in who will pay his rent, not what the use is. And it's just totally inappropriate in these areas, I think. So put me down as a C. I don't know how anybody else feels about the buffer, but I'd like to see it dealt with in the same way we deal with cannabis.
Put me down for C2.
Me too.
Okay. Sounds like we're on to C.
Okay.
All right, you have what you need?
I do
So,
have a question, though.
Do we want to direct them to prepare some documents for us? That's one of them, I know. What else have you got?
The clarification is, so we seem to have coalesced around alternative C.
Yes.
And the question that I have is several, actually. One, we have buffers from sensitive uses. Is that all you're looking to do there? And do you want to buffer them from each other? Just a finer point on this buffer issue, so.
I'm personally okay with just sensitive uses.
Okay.
Personally.
I agree. If there's 3 tobacco stores in a row, there's 3 tobacco stores.
We've got them kind of across the street from each other at crossroads. I don't think that perhaps Mr. Gutterman could tell us more, but I don't think it causes a problem for him from a competition standpoint.
Okay.
Okay. You can hear me?
So I hear you, thank you,
Okay.
that's
Yep.
helpful.
What's
So
next
that's
question?
one on. The other was about the definition. So we talked about bringing it together into one last public hearing on this, and now I thought I heard something about separating it back out again. As we had initially had.
Mr. Mantis suggested we separate it out.
I just want to know what the
What
commission
does the commission feel?
thought.
I know you also
agreed on that only
agreed.
because I felt that a lot of new information was introduced tonight. And they didn't realize that Kratom and Delta Products were unregulated cannabis. And now I feel like maybe that needs to be looked at separately.
Okay.
And would it just be specific products by name, or would you just look at it as unregulated cannabis products, and how do you define that? Right?
No.
Yeah, that's the challenge.
So right now, if you look at this definition, right, we don't, this is blending the two. If you recall from the first from the first part of the hearing in March, we had this separate thing called a head shop, and there was some fun with that and all. But nonetheless, it's on point in many points in the wording of that definition. So I guess if we're not defining it like this, and and if the commission's direction is to separate it, then my question then is, do we need to even change tobacco smoke shop, if then they can only sell tobacco? Now, there's a related question to think of before answering that question. Paraphernalia.
Yeah.
We're talking about products that are being used, right? The kratom, the hemp, whatever it is. But what about glass pipes and
Or rolling papers.
rolling papers? So what I'm saying is that part of what we heard was objection to specific products, the use of unregulated THC products. Let's just use that as a general catch-all for the lack of better terms and to simplify. But we also have, we received complaints, and part of what precipitated this was paraphernalia, to be very direct with the commission. So glass pipes, the things that are used typically for smoking cannabis, but could also be used for smoking tobacco as well. May not be very common, but couldn't you? Of course.
And I guess some of that comes from like the advertising angle. And again, maybe this is something I'd like to see come back when we compare the alcohol requirements versus the tobacco requirements. Are there regulations for what can be advertised in terms of alcohol versus what can be advertised? I mean, maybe if all the, head shop stuff is in the back of the tobacco shops and it's not in the windows encouraging young people, then maybe we don't care. Or maybe we need to have, so I guess that would be where
What do we
I
run?
want to learn more.
What do we run into in First Amendment situations with that, right?
Signs, yeah, that's part of the problem.
All right, but so there's no requirements in the alcohol sphere for what you can put in your windows, what you can't put in your windows, whether or not.
We'd have to look, and then you have to realize also that's part of a license, right? A permission to do something.
Right.
This isn't licensing that we're doing here. We're doing land use. So
Right,
there
but
are
no, I
different
know.
abilities of the municipality.
I think when we
in
were
terms of
talking
control.
about sending this back to city council, I was, trying to.
Well, and perhaps we have
See
a
why we found this
set of
issue.
things that we'd like them to consider that are not land use related that we ask them to consider as part of what the memo that gets sent up to city council. Just so everybody understands, we're a recommending body. So whatever we do goes to city council. They are the ones who have the final authority. So
We also heard from some citizens tonight who could easily go straight to the city council themselves.
correct. Of course. Correct.
Because this item will eventually,
Go
as directed by you, go to city council with a recommendation. And certainly, I think what Corporation Council is saying is, out of this body's jurisdiction to start coming up with an ordinance for chapter
Right.
125. That's what we're
Right.
saying.
And-
Could you say that we heard testimony that that perhaps the council should consider these things also after you do your land use thing? Sure. I mean, we
Yeah.
can carry that message, Mr. Chairman. if
appreciate that.
necessary, and if that's what the commission wishes.
I think it's worthwhile to ask them if, yes,
I think,
Councilman.
as you discussed that recommendation, it might be interesting to pull the definition of a vape shop as
Right.
opposed to a tobacco and smoking shop and
Right.
see how it addresses some of those other products.
The other thing that I just was thinking as I saw up there, and that is on-site consumption. Because medical marijuana, the marijuana, they don't allow on-site consumption.
No.
So it's one thing, I guess, if it was a cigar bar to have it, in on-site consumption. It's a totally other thing if it's a vape shop like the one in Highwood that people come in and they do consume in that place, and I don't think we want that either. So I think we want to make sure in the definition that we talk about no on-site consumption. And if they want on-site consumption, then I'm happy to talk about a conditional use for that. So if somebody wants to open up a cigar bar, they come and they make a petition. Does that make sense?
Is that how the wine shops work in town?
I don't know how this new wine shop works in town. That's a good question.
Because I know,
But they have a bar I'm assuming they have there's different types of licenses for liquor licenses.
Right.
Right? So I'm assuming there is a special liquor license for on-site consumption that you have for almost every restaurant and perhaps for them. So maybe it's handled through a license,
Yeah, Chair, as you see, of course, you wouldn't be drinking your wine inside a 7-Eleven. That's a different class
Right.
than,
But-
exactly what you're saying.
As opposed to up here at
wine.
Linear or whatever the name of the. Linford, thank you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So, I think so you're agreeing it's a licensing thing, it's not a,
Oh, yeah.
A use
That's
thing.
common in many municipalities where there are classes of license.
so maybe one of the things we need to see is what are the licensing requirements or are there licensing requirements for the sale of tobacco in Highland Park? And what are they, and what are the classifications of the licenses? Because if we're making, again, that's out of our purview to legislate, let's say, or even recommend legislation, but what I see is we're going to compile a list of things that we think city council should look at in addition to the land use.
Well, and I feel like in order to understand this, we need to understand what are the regulations for alcohol, what are the other regulations for tobacco, so that we can be comparing apples to apples.
That's fine.
And, I recall that we had a meeting a couple years ago where we included the use of, we wanted to allow more experiential businesses.
Correct.
Allowing a meadery, allowing these smaller wine tasting places, How is that different from a cigar bar? I don't know, maybe that's the same thing. So I feel like all these products should maybe be regulated in the same way. I don't know. I guess I'd want to know, just in terms of research, where we all stand with them all. Or somebody should.
Okay. So am I hearing that we're not quite ready for them to prepare any documents? We want more information?
I'm kind of thinking that.
Okay. Is that the consensus?
Will that information change which alternative that we're looking at?
No, you're right, probably not.
Yeah, so then I was going to interject that as well, Commissioner Quinlan. And so I would say with respect to the commission, you may have a subsidiary's a recommendation to have council look into that, but in terms of what we've been directed to do, the scope of that it's not quite as wide as that.
Right.
I would say respectfully, we will come back though from a land use perspective, what you've asked Vice Chair Moore with regard to, where are the liquor stores and where, those types of other uses that you might see as comparable so that we can be informed from a land use locational perspective where those are allowed. And also we'll recap where our dispensaries are allowed as well, because that would be.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Yes, sir.
Joel, do we, Director Fontaine, do we not currently have a red flag on additional vape shops or smoke shops?
Right now, the council did adopt a red flag amendment, and that is the source of the direction that this commission is taking.
So my follow-up question is, how long is that red flag ordinance in effect before? I guess I understand what they're considering in terms of addition to the land use in terms of licensing or definitions, but is there a timeframe to make sure that ordinance, that red flag ordinance doesn't expire? The goal is circumvented by someone getting in between the time that expires, they recommend something and subsequently council approves it.
So to answer your question is that the council said that we need to open a hearing in 90 days. Didn't put any other time constraint. However, just as a matter of land use regulation, you need to make, concerted effort and progress toward actually considering something. You just don't throw that out there and then don't do anything, right? And so I think we are, and we need to, continue to stay focused on what the council directed. And I think just with the last clarification that I made, I think we have gotten back to that.
That was the point I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Joel.
I do,
Okay.
because before I was concerned about the same thing, because that's really off what they were directed, but also could take considerably longer, and that would frustrate council's effort in terms of wanting to hear back from you. They didn't set a specific deadline, but certainly they do.
Okay, so as I see it, we've asked for some additional information.
Yep.
Right?
Right.
You'll bring that the next time.
Sure.
It's totally separate from the land use.
Yes.
You have direction on the land use, but I would like a motion to direct staff to prepare findings of fact and a draft ordinance for our consideration to basically codify what is in alternative C. Okay?
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Moore, second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Quinlan. Any discussion, any further discussion? Yes, sir.
Did we properly address your concern about the
Accessory use?
accessory use? So I thought that was.
Well, I think as long as, I'm assuming that that it can still be an accessory use outside of these districts, right?
Correct.
Right, and
That's correct.
the only way to keep it from selling the same objectionable materials that we've noted here would be, again, that would be part of a different ordinance that the city council is involved. It's not really it's not for the plan commission's consideration. That's why I think when we send this to city council after hopefully the next meeting, we compile a list of things we would like them to look at and consider how to further limit those things.
So on that point,
Yep.
if I can ask, so it sounds like we want to kind of limit accessory use, right, as best as possible. I guess my thought is, should we scale even back the 20% of retail sales floor area from 20% to something lower so that we're controlling a little bit more?
You could make it 10%. Sure.
I would make that recommendation.
I think that's not, just for the sale of tobacco and tobacco-related products, right?
Paraphernalia, like it would be.
What's in the definition? So the accessory use will be not more than 10% is what you're proposing.
And included in that would be all of what we're calling unregulated cannabis, right?
Correct.
So as long as
Until they ban it from the city.
Well, they deal with that, yeah.
Right, till they deal with it.
Yeah, I think as long as that's included, I would feel very comfortable scaling that 20% back.
Any other feelings on that? We're all good with that?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Why that helps
friendly amendment.
staff is it does help because it provides for us a very clear line about how much this could be shown, because accessory uses are judged essentially by interpretation with regard to specific standards. By putting in this, it gives us the ability to have a hard, clear line as opposed to an interpretive line that could go up to 49%. And one could argue, well, it's accessory, it's only 42%. So this is why staff suggested some number, and if 10% is the number the commission recommends, so be it.
10% is fine with me. All right, so 10%. Okay. All right.
So
Yes,
Chair,
sir.
can we just get clarification from or confirmation from the movement in the second that 10% is what they intend?
Friendly amendment.
That is acceptable to me.
Second?
The seconder is nodding his head yes. We'll make note of it that way, right?
Okay.
All right, no other further discussion? Call the roll.
Commissioner Mantis.
Aye.
Commissioner Quinlan.
Aye.
Commissioner Bruckman.
And do I need to state that I wasn't at the March 21st meeting, but I did watch the video, so I'm
Thank you.
ready to vote.
Thank you.
Great.
Commissioner Kirsch,
Aye.
Vice Chair Moore,
Aye.
Chairman Haynesfurther.
Aye.
The ayes have
Six
it.
ayes, no nays.
Direction is given.
I want to thank the.
Hold on one second. We do need to
continue
continue the
this,
public
yeah.
hearing, and I do want to make one statement for the gentleman that was speaking before, well, for everybody. So right now, again, we're formulating what will be distilled into an ordinance, a recommended ordinance from this body. So there's been no final action, nothing has changed yet. I want everyone to understand that until that ordinance is finalized, it can change. So I had mentioned this evening to this gentleman who was standing here, and I apologize, I forgot your name, but I said that it would not, at this point, the recommendation wouldn't affect his store, right? Because it's recommended to be a permitted use. I just want to be clear to everyone, and we will reach out to you. And please, if you will, just tell us your name and contact information if you choose to be contacted about this so that you could follow through. And we'll tell you when it's coming before this body again, and we'll tell you when it's going to city council.
Well,
So,
we're about to tell them when it's coming to this body because we
Correct.
have to continue the public hearing. Before we do that, I just want to thank the members of the public, all of you, for coming tonight. We appreciate it. We value your input, as you could tell, I hope. We do listen, and, you know, there's a great saying in the front of this building that, you know, about the watchfulness of citizens contributing to the community. So, appreciate it. I know it's a lot of time out of your day. With that, when do we want to continue this to, sir?
With an ordinance, staff recommends the June 6th Plan and Design Commission meeting.
Okay.
So not the next one, but the one
Right.
after.
So I'm looking for a motion to continue this to June 6th.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Moore, seconded by
Seconded.
Commissioner Mantis. All in favor signify by saying, is that a voice vote or is it got to be a roll call?
Voice vote.
Voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 6 ayes, no nays.
Forgive me, I missed the second. Who seconded that?
Seconded by Commissioner Mantis.
Thank you. That was the
All right.
motion was by the vice chair, right?
Yes, and there will be no additional notice if you do not sign.
well, not sign, but just tell us.
Tell
where
us
you'd like
how to
us sign.
contact you, right? That's what I mean by sign.
Right.
Right.
You can look at the city council, the city's website and see the agendas as well, but again, we will be glad to email you directly with any information and let you know that as this goes through the process.
Thank you. Can we take
Please do right there.
take a 5-minute break so that these folks can sign
Yep.
the information and clear the room? So thank you. 5 minutes, so we'll reconvene at 25 till.
Okay.
And we are still recording and streaming. I'll just
That's fine.
remind
That
the
was-
commission of that.
Back in
Thank you. Have a
session.
good evening, sir.
We ready? Okay, next item of business is public hearing 2023-ZTA-002. Hey, 00, we're meeting here. 002 for a chapter 150 zoning text amendment to amend or modify section 150-40.407 to allow sleeping quarters in cellars as well as other regulations as may be necessary, important, or beneficial to the city and its residents related to sleeping or cooking facilities in cellars and basement. This is a public hearing. We have not opened it yet, so we will do that now. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Highland Park Plan and Design Commission. My name is Walter Hainsfurther. A quorum of the Plan and Design Commission being present, the members of the Plan and Design Commission will now introduce themselves for the record from my right.
Mike Quinlan.
Marissa Bruckman. Karen Moore.
Steve Kirch.
Danny Mantis.
The Plan and Design Commission is charged with hearing applications for rezonings, plan developments, and subdivisions under the zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations of the City of Highland Park. In all matters, we recommend to the City Council based upon the testimony presented to us in the hearing. We are required to decide cases within 45 days after receipt of the transcript. All testimony is under oath. Both applicants and others who wish to speak on a particular case should present specific evidence as to why a proposal meets or fails to meet the standards for relief requested. For clarity of our record, only one person at a time will speak, and all questions will be directed through the chair. We ask that you will make every effort to not be repetitive in your testimony. And finally, we will make every effort to adhere to the schedule prepared for tonight's hearing. If additional time is needed on a matter, it will be continued until the next available agenda. And with that, I open the floor to the staff of the Plan and Design Commission to read into the record proof of publication and ownership.
Proof of publication and ownership are available for viewing at the Offices of Community Development, 1150 Half Day Road in Highland Park. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Burhop, are you presenting this?
Yes, sir.
And this is a standing presentation as opposed to a sitting one, right?
Special treat. Yeah.
Does it mean it's more or less important? That's the question, right?
Until or unless I need to take notes.
Okay.
So this is a relatively short presentation. The report was relatively short, so this is a request for feedback or to adopt the findings of fact, if appropriate, because there were findings of fact in the packet recommending approval if the commission is ready for that. So the commission should open the public hearing, take testimony, consider the request and deliberate, provide feedback if appropriate, and adopt the findings of fact recommending approval if appropriate. And yeah, we're right. There are FOF findings of fact within the packet that recommend removing the prohibition for sleeping quarters in a cellar. So background, on April 10th, the City Council considered a compere referral for a bedroom in a cellar. Compere referral is a phrase used in the City of Highland Park for a specific type of zoning variation that goes to the City Council first, and then at the City Council's discretion onwards to the Zoning Board of Appeals and possibly back to the City Council. It's named after Thomas Compere, former city attorney, long time, years ago. The City Council chose not to refer that, instead directed or asked for this public hearing and for this to go the zoning text amendment route. So per section 150.407 of the zoning code, quote, no cellar in any building shall be used for or contain any quarters for sleeping or residential cooking, unquote. So that's the prohibition. There is no change proposed to the residential cooking. This is just a change proposed to the sleeping quarters or facility provision. Some interesting notes or comments on our zoning code. Section 150.202, which is the definition section, has a definition for basement and a definition for cellar, and it has that graphic. I mean, they're up there to be read verbatim, but I often paraphrase them to architects and design professionals that if the majority of the lower level is below the grade of the property, then it's a cellar. If the majority of the lower level height is above grade, then it's a basement. And there's meaning with the distinction. FAR is actually the main one that most people ask, but in this case, the significance or distinction is that a bedroom or sleeping quarters are allowed in the basement, but they're not allowed in the cellar. And then you can see, the cellar here, that's your traditional majority below grade, below the ground. Then your basement is where the majority is above the grade or the ground.
Thank you, Marcus.
So yeah, as already stated, bedrooms are allowed in lower levels if the lower level is a basement by definition, provided that they meet building codes, the permitting process, but not if the bedroom is a cellar. So it's important to point out that there are building codes related to life and fire safety regulations. If somebody is converting to a bedroom and they come in for a permit, they have to meet those requirements, which include some type of window. I don't know the dimensions. Building code is not my particular forte, but suffice it to say there are regulations. Has to be a certain dimension, whatever, so that somebody can get in and out,
It just
out.
has to be a means of egress,
Yes.
right? So it either has to be an escape window, which is a larger window, or it could be a door that leads to an area well.
Oh, right, correct, correct.
Right.
And again, that's within the city's building codes.
And we're not changing that.
No, they're absolutely not, sir. There is no proposal
Just getting it on the record.
for that. I think this is my last slide. So just if somebody were to wonder, well, why was it prohibited to start off with? Well, again, but this prohibition, I did look it up. So as it is right now, it goes back to at least 1997. A similar but slightly different worded version goes all the way back to the 1947 zoning code. I don't think I found it in the 1922 code though, but that was a shorter code. So, it's possible that this has just changed because building codes have been updated and new construction has to meet current codes and have that egress for fire or other emergency. Right, and as stated, that's currently addressed by current building codes. It's possible also that there were concerns about the creation of illegal dwelling units, and we're not proposing to change that either. If you're single family zoning, you have to have one single family home on the property. So, and that was included in the report. I think that is the extent of that's my presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Questions for staff? Anyone?
I have a question.
Let's start with Commissioner Kirch.
This should be so easy. The cooking prohibition in the cellar, is that by code? If a cellar,
By the zoning code.
if we took the restriction out in the zoning code, would the building code allow it?
Well, so we're only proposing to take out the sleeping
I,
prohibition.
I'm asking for a totally different reason because our use of cellar and basement totally confuses me. And I have to find that confuses a lot of other people.
Basement is likely a cellar.
It confused me too at the last
Yeah.
council meeting, and I asked Steve for a definition.
Yeah, basically, I think almost everybody's basements are cellars, at least mine is a
Well, that's what most
cellar
people
and
would
not-
call them.
Not a basement based on this definition.
And I do understand why you might want to do it this way based on FAR calculations, but don't most building codes just distinguish above ground and below ground? Above grade and below grade?
No, because if you have let's think of it this way, if you have a split level, it may be half underground and half above ground, and it's going to contribute to the height in particular.
Well, I get the raised ranch, which is common, right?
Or
But-
walkouts sometimes.
Walkout basement, yeah. Built into the hills here in
I
Highland Park.
I just think maybe, I only found cellar listed 4 times in the code when I searched it. So I think having a cellar definition is kind of.
Well, sorry.
Yes, Carl.
The primary distinction.
We're having a
This out
conversation.
because of my.
We're having a conversation.
The primary distinction is where it normally comes up in the 7 years I've worked here is not related to the residential or to the sleeping facilities. It comes up mostly because whether or not you count it as floor area ratio, if you count it to the limit that a property has, and that's how it normally comes up. But of course, there's no proposal related to that this evening.
Well, I think what he's asking is, why are we prohibiting cooking down there, right, kitchen down
No,
there?
I'm saying if we did away with cellars completely.
Oh, okay.
And just talked about below grade spaces, would the code prohibit cooking in a below grade space that was X amount below grade?
Yeah,
If
so.
you could meet the building code, no, and I don't know off the top of my head what the restrictions are, but I don't believe there's any restrictions beyond proper ventilation and air circulation.
And, yeah, like you would any kitchen, right?
Right.
Yeah, and notice it only prohibits residential cooking facilities as well. It doesn't prohibit commercial. So commercial would be allowed in a cellar as long as they met building code requirements for that.
Thank you.
Vice Chair.
I don't know why I'm so confused by this. Okay, so
You're not the only one, as Councilman Stolberg
let me
said.
ask this question. With the new regulation, you would, yes, be allowed to have a basement, a bedroom in a basement, correct?
You are
Sleeping
today,
quarters.
sleeping quarters, you are today, it's the question of having it in a cellar.
Okay, so that's also that's my part B. So if you have a sleeping quarters in a basement, if we're going to allow that, we do have to have an egress, is that correct?
Yeah.
A means of egress.
Yeah.
Would that go also for the cellar?
Yes,
Okay,
by building code.
okay.
So
So,
what prevents people from doing it in a cellar is this code.
okay, so is this code now allowing a bedroom in a cellar?
Yes.
As long as it's sleeping quarters?
If we adopt this,
Sleeping quarters.
if the city council adopts this findings of fact, it will.
Okay, so this is adding it to, all right, removing it from cellar, so it was already around, okay. Thank you.
You look like you want to say something.
No, I don't. Thank
Okay.
you.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. Any testimony from the public? I see a shaking head. Thank you. All right, so I'm looking for a motion to adopt findings of fact recommending this to city council.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Moore, seconded by?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Bruckman. Any discussion on this matter? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Mantis.
Aye.
Commissioner Quinlan.
Aye.
Commissioner Bruckman.
Aye.
Commissioner Kirsch.
Aye.
Vice Chair Moore.
Aye.
Chairman Haynes for the.
Aye, 6 ayes, no nays, the motion passes.
Okay.
All right, thank you. We have already done, we're on to other business. We have done the resolution honoring our student representative, outgoing student representative, any administrative design review update.
I do not have any administrative
Okay.
design review updates.
Next regular meeting is May 16th, and we have the bike
That's right.
parking on that. Nothing else, though.
I'm not aware of any other items off the top of my head, no.
All right, before, any other business from the public? Seeing none. Before we adjourn, I want to make note that this is Councilman Stolberg's last meeting with us. And I was hoping Commissioner Hecht would be here. He could say nice words about you. But of course, he missed, so I have to do that, I think. I think that it's hard to imagine this commission without Councilman Stolberg here, between his service on the commission as a commissioner and as chairman, and then as Plan Commission liaison for as long as I have been on. I think for the 6 years he served the city, is exemplary, and he understands the work of our commission. He supports the work of our commission when not everybody on the city council has been known to do so, and I generally appreciate that, but more importantly, I appreciate his friendship and his guidance. And he, in my mind, was always the most effective city council person we had. I think I said that when my endorsement of him. I don't know who's going to be our new liaison, but he or she is going to have tremendously large shoes to fill. I hope that you stay true to the fact that you said you'll come back and visit us, maybe after a brief hiatus, even when there's an opening, rejoin the commission, because I think you have contributed a lot and have a lot more to contribute as well. So with that, I would like to thank you and offer a round of applause for your service.
Thank you, if I may.
Sure.
You know, I often say that while this is a recommending body, it is arguably the most visible commission we have. You know, ZBA tends to be more of people who are already in our community, seeking relief for their home, buying a home, and it's usually related to one person and affects one family. There are so many times where we actually have more people in our audience at these meetings wishing to be heard, wishing to be involved, than we actually have at a council meeting. And it's certainly where I learned a lot. I know it's, you know, one of those commissions that meets, more than once a quarter or once a month. So it takes a commitment from all of you. And just as you thank me, I wish to thank all of you for your service. And despite what some people think, I think the last several years post-COVID have been very productive for Highland Park. We can do better, we can do more, we will. But, you know, I think our downtown development has gotten terrific developments, a couple of Albion things. I don't want to mention developers by name and go through it, but I think you guys are doing great work. And I'm done for the moment. I don't know what the future holds, but thank you for everything. I think there are people sitting up here who have the right experience and the right temperament and have the ability to hopefully continue to serve the city in a higher capacity. But Tripp, I really appreciate your kind words and your friendship. There are people on this commission and commissions before you who I made friendships with. And it really makes my time on city council that much more special by being liaison to this commission for so long. So thank you all. Maybe I'll have nothing to do on a Tuesday night and sit in the audience with Cal.
Or you can come and testify.
Thank you all.
With that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Case briefing?
Oh, no, he did the case briefing. Oh, no, case briefing. I'm sorry. Thank you. I forgot that, Joel.
It's okay. I understand we had more.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Thank
Take
you.
care of here this
He just wants more FaceTime.
So the council did adopt the recommendation with regard to Mr. Hillman's parking lot, and the recommendation for the Ravinia School was direct documents, approval documents per recommendation, and so those will be before the council as Carl finishes loading those up tomorrow as they'll get there under omnibus. So I look forward to that as well.
So is that the old council that does that or the new council that does that? So there's you're done, right?
I think I take the dais and then there's a Latin word
Right.
for.
Sine die.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what it is.
And
Okay.
then we switch.
Thank you, Joel. So with that, I will take a
Move to adjourn.
motion by Commissioner Kirsch. Seconded by?
Second.
Seconded by Vice Chair Moore. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're done. Yep.
The guy over there from the cigar shop.